I woke up to an empty bed, the cold sheets telling me Lucas had been gone for a while. I strained to hear his voice down the hallway, low, careful. Something was off. I tiptoed closer, catching a phrase that sent a chill down my spine. She doesn't suspect anything yet. My heart raced as I retreated to the bedroom, feigning sleep as Lucas returned. His weight shifted the mattress, but I kept my breathing steady, mind racing. Who was he talking to? What didn't I suspect? The next morning, I checked our bank account, something I rarely did since Lucas handled our finances. A series of unusual withdrawals caught my eye, small amounts, but frequent enough to raise red flags. I confronted Lucas over breakfast, but he brushed it off as investments. His evasiveness only deepened my suspicions. Days turned into weeks, and Lucas's behavior grew more secretive. He was always on his phone, taking calls in the other room, his screen face down. One evening, he left his phone unattended, and a notification from an unknown name, Elijah Kane, lit up the screen. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost there. I grabbed the phone, heart pounding, and read the message preview. Who was Elijah Kane? What was Lucas planning? I heard the water shut off and quickly replaced the phone, my mind spinning with questions and fears. That night, I lay awake, Lucas's words echoing in my mind. I needed proof before confronting him. The next morning, Lucas presented me with documents claiming they were financial updates for tax purposes. But as I skimmed through, I realized they were property transfer agreements designed to move all our assets into his name. I refused to sign, and Lucas's facade crumbled. He admitted to planning to leave me, but denied any wrongdoing. I stood my ground, determined to protect what was mine. I secretly moved my assets into a trust, ensuring Lucas couldn't access them. Lucas served me with divorce papers, demanding half of everything in spousal support. I met with my lawyer, Victoria, who assured me that Lucas had no legal grounds to make such demands. I felt a glimmer of hope, knowing I had the upper hand. But Lucas wasn't going to walk away quietly. Rumors spread at my workplace, accusing me of financial misconduct. Lucas was trying to ruin my reputation. I filed a cease and desist order, but he ignored it. I decided to take a more aggressive approach, determined to clear my name and expose Lucas's deceit. In court, Lucas's lawyer requested a full financial audit, accusing me of mismanaging funds. My lawyer presented evidence proving all financial moves were made before the divorce filing. The judge dismissed Lucas's motion and ordered him to pay all legal fees. I felt a sense of victory, but the battle was far from over. Lucas and Elijah filed a formal complaint accusing me of financial fraud. My lawyer discovered the submitted documents were forged. I decided to go on the offensive, filing a motion to prove the documents were fraudulent and suing Lucas and Elijah for defamation and falsifying legal evidence. In the final court hearing, my lawyer presented irrefutable evidence of the forged documents. The judge dismissed Lucas's claims and ordered him to pay damages. Lucas walked out of the courtroom, defeated and humiliated. I felt a sense of closure, knowing I had finally won the battle. I celebrated my victory with my mother and best friend, Emily. I reflected on the lessons I had learned and the strength I had gained. I decided to start a new chapter in my life, focusing on my personal growth and happiness. Standing on my balcony, gazing at the city skyline, I received a call from an unknown number but chose to block it, symbolizing my decision to leave the past behind. I opened my laptop, ready to write my own story, embracing the uncertainty of the future with newfound confidence and resilience. Who the hell is Elijah Kane? The next morning, the question still haunted me, gnawing at my every thought. I moved through my morning routine like a ghost, going through the motions, but my mind was locked onto one thing, Elijah Kane. The name lingered in my brain like an unsolved puzzle, a piece that didn't fit but refused to be ignored. Lucas sat across from me at breakfast, scrolling through his phone, perfectly at ease. I wondered if he had any idea I had seen that message. If he did, he was a damn good actor. But then, as if sensing my suspicion, he looked up and smiled. "Hey, babe," he said, his tone casual. "Can you sign something real quick?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "Sign what?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He slid a document across the table, his tone still casual, but his fingers drummed against the table in an uneven rhythm, a tell I had picked up over the years. "Just some financial updates for tax purposes," he said. I picked up the papers, my stomach tightening as I skimmed through the first page. Legal jargon filled the document, but one thing became painfully clear: this wasn't about taxes. I flipped to the last page and my pulse pounded in my ears. Property transfer agreement. My assets, my savings, Even the condo, everything would be moved into his name. I forced myself to look up. Lucas was watching me, a careful smile plastered on his face. Lucas, I said, my voice too controlled. What is this? His smile didn't falter. It's just a precaution, babe, he said smoothly, as if that made it better. A legal convenience. Nothing changes between us. I stared at him, my grip tightening around the paper. Nothing changes. He was asking me to sign over everything to him. Not everything, he said smoothly, as if that made it better. Just consolidating things for protection, in case something happens. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from rage. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This wasn't me reading into things. This was planned, and he had the audacity to sit across from me and act like it was nothing. I placed the document back on the table, slow and deliberate. Then I met his gaze. I'm not signing this, I said. His smile twitched, his jaw clenched for a fraction of a second before he let out a short laugh. Ava, don't be dramatic, he said. It's just paperwork. I held my ground. Then why are you so eager for me to sign without reading it? His expression hardened. He leaned in slightly, his voice low and controlled, but there was something underneath it, a warning, a threat. You really don't want to do this, Ava, he said. I met his gaze unflinching. Is that a threat? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression morphing into something dangerously unreadable. The smirk he had worn moments ago faded, replaced with an unsettling calm. I just think you're making this harder than it needs to be, he said, his voice too smooth, too measured. I swallowed my anger, keeping my expression neutral. He still thought he was in control, that I was just another move on his carefully planned out chessboard. I let the silence stretch, watching him the way his fingers tapped idly against the table, the slight twitch in his jaw when I didn't respond. He was waiting for me to react, to get emotional, to panic, to break. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. So I smiled just enough to make him shift uncomfortably. You know what, Lucas? I said lightly, standing up and gathering the papers. You're right. I do need to think about this. His eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't expecting that, but I had already turned away, walking to the kitchen and placing the documents neatly on the counter. I wasn't going to argue, not now, not yet, because now I was the one in control. That night, Lucas acted like nothing had happened. He moved through our home like we were still just another happy couple, making himself a drink, watching the news, scrolling through his phone like he didn't just try to con me into signing away everything I owned. But as I watched him, a realization settled in my chest like a weight. This had never been about saving our marriage. He wasn't trying to fix things, he was setting up his exit. And he wanted to take everything with him when he left. The next morning, I found him in the living room, sipping his coffee like he didn't have a single worry in the world. But when I sat across from him, he glanced up immediately, sensing that something had shifted. We need to talk, he said, setting his cup down. I tilted my head. Oh? He exhaled as if this was difficult for him, as if he was the one struggling. I think we should separate, he said. There it was. He said it like a man delivering a well-rehearsed speech, every word perfectly measured. It's not working anymore, he continued, his tone even. You have to see that. I stared at him, unmoving. He wasn't asking for a divorce, he was telling me it was happening. I let a beat pass, then another, before I finally spoke. You've been planning this, haven't you? I said. A flicker of something crossed his face, gone before I could name it. It's for the best, Ava, he said. We've grown apart. Grown apart. That's what he was going with. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. You mean you want out, but you want to make sure you don't leave empty-handed? I said. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't deny it. I could have screamed. I could have thrown the nearest object across the room, but I didn't because something had shifted inside me, a steel resolve that hadn't been there before. So I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head slightly, and as calmly as I could, I said the words that would change everything. I already moved my assets, Lucas. His entire posture stiffened, his breath hitched, not enough for someone else to notice, but I did. What do you mean? He said, his voice too sharp, too controlled. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Exactly what it sounds like. His jaw clenched. I saw it then, the second he realized he had lost. He had spent months orchestrating this, setting up every little detail to ensure he came out on top. But he had underestimated me, and he hated that. A long silence stretched between us. Then, finally, Lucas exhaled sharply and stood up. He grabbed his coffee, took a slow sip, then turned to me with a look that sent ice through my veins. His smile returned, but this time it was colder, calculated. "You're going to regret this, Ava," he said. I wasn't sure if it was a threat or a desperate bluff. Either way, I was ready. Lucas had played his hand, and now it was my turn. The morning air felt heavier than usual as I moved through my routine. Coffee tasted bitter, and the silence of the apartment pressed against me like a weight. I told myself I wouldn't let his words from the night before get to me. But then came the knock at the door, sharp, measured, official. I set my coffee down and took a breath before opening it. A man in a navy blazer stood on the other side, holding a thick envelope. "Ava Thompson?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He extended the envelope, his expression blank. "You've been served?" I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Of course, he thought he could take everything. He had been planning this for months, probably longer. The man I married was cold, but this was calculated. The smell of polished wood and freshly printed documents filled the air as I sat across from my attorney. She flipped through the papers, barely suppressing a smirk as she reached the financial breakdown. "Well," she said, tapping her nails against the desk, "he's got nothing." I raised a brow. "Just like that." She glanced up, amused. "Just like that, you moved everything into a trust before he filed. That means legally he has no access. He can fight for spousal support, but considering your income history compared to his, it's not happening." I let out a slow breath, my shoulders finally releasing the tension I had been holding on to since that knock on my door. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly in control. Lucas had spent all this time thinking he was the one orchestrating the game. He had underestimated me. That evening, I had just finished pouring myself a glass of wine when the front door slammed open. I didn't even flinch. Lucas stood there, fury rolling off him in waves. His tie was loosened, and his jaw was clenched so tight, I swore I heard his teeth grind. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" he said, his voice sharp, venomous. I took a slow sip of my wine, savoring the way his anger twisted around him like a storm. "I think I'm finally protecting myself," I said. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "You planned this," he spat. I set my glass down, tilting my head. "So did you?" Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken accusations. Then, finally, he exhaled sharply, his eyes darkening as he muttered, "This isn't over." I exhaled slowly. I had won the first battle, but the war had just begun. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small sense of relief, knowing that Lucas had lost his financial grip on me. But I should have known better than to think he would walk away quietly. The first sign of trouble came at work. It started with looks, not the usual passing glances, but lingering stares with whispers that cut off the second I entered the room. By mid-morning, my assistant Rachel hesitated before stepping into my office. "Hey, I think you should know something," she said. I glanced up from my laptop, already exhausted. "What is it?" She shifted uncomfortably. "There's a rumor going around." I wasn't going to say anything, but she trailed off, wringing her hands. "Just tell me, Rachel," I said. She hesitated, then sighed. "People are saying you took money from your joint accounts, that you were," she swallowed hard, "laundering funds." I stared at her, the words landing like a slap. "What?" "I don't believe it," she added quickly. "But Lucas, he's been talking to people, lawyers, mutual friends. The story is spreading." My stomach twisted, fury rising in my chest like wildfire. Lucas wasn't just trying to take my money, he was trying to ruin me. By the time I got to my lawyer's office, I was barely holding it together. "This needs to stop now," I said, slamming the stack of printed screenshots onto the desk. My hands shook with rage. My lawyer, Patricia, glanced at them and let out a dry chuckle. "Well, he's certainly desperate," she said. "He's slandering you." "Yes, but we can use that," she said, leaning back in her chair, tapping her pen against her desk. "If he's running around making false claims, he's opening himself up to defamation charges. We send a cease and desist first. If he ignores it, we escalate." I clenched my jaw. "I don't want this to drag out in court. I just want him to stop." Patricia sighed. "He's trying to bait you, Ava. He wants you to react emotionally." I heard a voice from the door. "Check right." I turned to see Beatrice standing by the door with a knowing look. "You can't let him dictate your next move," she said, stepping forward. "You react too fast and he wins." I swallowed my anger, nodding stiffly. But inside, I was seething. Lucas wanted a fight, and he was about to get one. The morning after my confrontation with Lucas, I woke up to a harsh reality. The divorce papers arrived, stark and unyielding, demanding half of everything we had built together, the car, our shared assets, and the audacity of spousal support. Lucas had planned this meticulously, but I wasn't going to let him win without a fight. I rushed to my lawyer's office, the papers clutched tightly in my hands. Patricia, my attorney, reviewed them with a smirk. He's got nothing. Ava, she said. You moved everything into a trust before he filed. Legally, he has no access. I felt a wave of relief, but I knew Lucas wouldn't go down without a fight. That evening, Lucas stormed into the apartment, his face a mask of fury. You think you're so smart, don't you? He snarled. I stood my ground, sipping my wine calmly. I think I'm finally protecting myself, I replied. He clenched his fists, his voice low and threatening. This isn't over, Ava. I knew he meant it. Lucas wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully. The next day at work, I felt the weight of stares and heard the whispers. Rumors were circulating that I had been laundering funds from our joint accounts. Lucas was trying to ruin my reputation, and it was working. My assistant, Rachel, confirmed the rumors, her voice laced with concern. I was livid but determined to fight back. Patricia and I strategized. We sent a cease and desist letter to Lucas demanding he stop the slander, but Lucas ignored it, continuing his smear campaign. I decided to confront him directly. I found him at LaRue, an upscale restaurant, laughing with colleagues as if he didn't have a care in the world. I leaned down and whispered in his ear, You have no idea what you've just started. His smirk faltered, but he quickly recovered, accepting my challenge. Lucas's next move was to file a motion for a full financial audit, accusing me of mismanaging our joint funds. It was a desperate attempt to drain me of resources and wear me down. Patricia counterfiled, presenting evidence that all my financial moves were made before Lucas even filed for divorce. The judge dismissed the motion and ordered Lucas to pay all legal fees. Outside the courtroom, Lucas muttered a threat. As he passed me, You think this is over? Just wait. I knew Lucas wouldn't give up so easily. Men like him didn't walk away quietly, they regrouped and struck back harder. The next morning, Patricia called with more bad news. Lucas and Elijah had filed a formal complaint accusing me of financial fraud. They had submitted doctored documents as evidence, claiming I had been falsifying financial records for months. If the court took this seriously, I could face a criminal investigation. I was shaken but determined to clear my name. Patricia had Beatrice, a financial analyst, examine the documents. Beatrice discovered a crucial flaw. The timestamps on the financial transfers were forged. The accounts didn't even exist when the transaction supposedly took place. This was the mistake that would ruin them. With this new evidence, I decided to go on the offensive. We filed a motion proving the documents were fraudulent and sued Lucas and Elijah for defamation and falsifying legal evidence. I wanted full damages, not just to clear my name, but to send a message that I wouldn't be intimidated. The final court battle was intense. Lucas's lawyer presented their case, accusing me of fraud. Patricia systematically dismantled their claims, presenting the forensic analyst's findings and highlighting the forged timestamps. The judge listened intently, reviewing the evidence with a stern expression. Finally, he delivered his verdict. The motion was dismissed, and Lucas was ordered to pay all legal fees. Outside the courtroom, Lucas walked past me without a word. I let him go, knowing that this time it was truly over. I had won not just the battle, but the war. Lucas had underestimated me, and it had cost him everything. In the days that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I celebrated my victory with my mother and best friend, Emily, who had supported me throughout the ordeal. We raised our glasses to freedom and new beginnings. I stood on my balcony that evening, gazing at the city skyline, feeling a sense of peace and empowerment. I had lost a lot in this battle: trust, time, and the illusion of a perfect marriage, but I had gained so much more: strength, clarity, and control over my life. I turned to my laptop, ready to write a new chapter in my story. As I closed the lid, I whispered to myself, this is my story now. I had faced betrayal and emerged stronger. I had fought not just for my finances, but for my dignity, my freedom, and my future. And I had won. I wanted to share my story to inspire others who might be going through similar struggles. I decided to start a blog sharing my experiences and the lessons I had learned. I hoped that my journey would resonate with others and remind them that they are stronger than they think. As I sat down to write my first post, I reflected on the roller coaster of emotions I had experienced. I had been blindsided by Lucas's betrayal, but I had chosen to fight back. I had learned that strength isn't about avoiding betrayal, it's about how you rise after it. I had discovered my true worth and the power of standing up for myself. I typed the first words of my blog post, feeling a sense of purpose and determination. Life has a way of testing us in the moments we least expect. I wrote, sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who betray us the deepest. But here's what I've learned: strength isn't about avoiding betrayal, it's about how you rise after it. I continued to pour my heart out onto the page, sharing my journey and the lessons I had learned. I encouraged my readers to share their own stories of resilience and to remember that they are not alone in their struggles. I ended the post with a call to action, inviting readers to share their thoughts in the comments and to subscribe to my blog for more stories of empowerment and growth. As I hit publish, I felt a sense of accomplishment and excitement. I was finally taking control of my narrative and using my voice to inspire others. I knew that my journey was far from over, but I was ready to embrace whatever challenges came my way. With each word I wrote, I felt a sense of healing and empowerment, knowing that my story could make a difference in the lives of others. With the legal battles behind me, I stood at the precipice of a new beginning. The final court ruling had vindicated me, and Lucas was left with nothing: no assets, no financial claims, and his reputation in tatters. I felt a profound sense of relief and empowerment, but I knew that true healing would come from within. I was determined to rebuild my life on my terms, embracing the strength and resilience I had discovered within myself. The days following the trial were filled with a mix of emotions. There was joy and celebration with my mother and Emily, who had been my rocks throughout the ordeal. We clinked glasses, toasting to freedom and new beginnings, yet there was also a quiet reflection, a acknowledgement of the pain and betrayal that had led me here. I stood on my balcony, gazing at the city skyline, the lights shimmering with possibilities. The view was familiar, but I saw it with new eyes, ready to write the next chapter of my story. I turned to my laptop, the cursor blinking expectantly on a blank document. I was ready to share my journey, to transform my experiences into a beacon of hope for others who might be facing similar struggles. I started typing, the words flowing from a place of authenticity and strength. Life has a way of testing us in the moments we least expect. I wrote, sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who betray us the deepest. But here's what I've learned: strength isn't about avoiding betrayal, it's about how you rise after it. I poured my heart into the words, sharing the raw emotions and hard-won lessons from my journey. I wrote about the importance of trusting oneself, of standing up for what is right, and of finding the courage to walk away from what no longer serves us. I encourage readers to share their own stories, to find solace in the shared experiences of resilience and growth. As I hit publish on my first blog post, I felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. I was taking control of my narrative, using my voice to inspire and empower others. The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in from readers who resonated with my story, sharing their own journeys of betrayal and triumph. I was reminded that we are never alone in our struggles, that our stories have the power to heal and connect us. In the weeks that followed, I continued to write, each post a testament to my growth and healing. I explored themes of self-discovery, forgiveness, and the power of starting anew. I received messages from readers who found comfort and inspiration in my words, who were reminded of their own strength and resilience. I was humbled and grateful for the impact my story was having on others. Yet, even as I embraced this new chapter, I knew that healing was not a linear journey. There were days when the weight of the past threatened to pull me down, when doubts and fears crept in. But I remained steadfast in my commitment to growth and self-discovery. I sought out new experiences, reconnected with old passions, and surrounded myself with people who uplifted and supported me. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of distant rain, I reflected on how far I had come. I had faced the darkest betrayal and emerged stronger, more sure of myself and my place in the world. I had learned to trust again, not just in others, but in myself and my instincts, my decisions, and my ability to overcome any challenge. I turned back to my laptop, the city lights reflecting on the screen. I opened a new document, ready to write the next chapter of my story. As I typed the first words, I felt a sense of peace and excitement for the future. I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with courage, resilience, and an unwavering belief in myself. This is my story now, I whispered to myself, a smile playing on my lips. I was no longer the woman who had ignored the warning signs, who had believed in the illusion of safety and permanence. I was a woman who had faced her fears, who had fought for her dignity, and freedom and who had emerged stronger and more empowered than ever before. As I continued to write, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had led me here. I was thankful for the lessons learned, for the strength discovered, and for the opportunity to share my story with others. I knew that my journey was far from over, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next, to write my own story with courage, authenticity, and an unwavering belief in the power of resilience and growth. In the end, I realized that the greatest victory was not in the battles won, but in the person I had become strong, confident, and unafraid to embrace the unknown. I had found my voice, my purpose, and my place in the world. And as I looked out at the city skyline, I knew that this was just the beginning of a new and extraordinary journey.